Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Deanna and I make videos on health and lifestyle, and this is going to be a series on my channel called the What Is. So the What Is series is about different mental health conditions and me just stomping out some of the stigma related to some of them and just informing people on the different types of mental illness and how best to support those with it. Before I get started, I just wanted to make a disclaimer. If you or anyone you know is suffering with any of this, then please seek help. It is important that you get professional help to help you deal with some of the emotions you may be struggling with. I myself am not a trained professional. I am literally just standing here presenting facts and personal experience. I will leave a link in the description box below to a page that has all the worldwide helpline numbers that you can contact if you are struggling. Within England, the best place to go is either your GP or the out-of-hours GP. If you would just like someone to talk to, you can call Samaritans on 116 123. This can be accessed on any mobile or landline. So today's video is about borderline personality disorder. This can be abbreviated as BPD. In England, it is also sometimes known as EUPD, or emotionally unstable personality disorder. So during this video, I'll be including pieces of advice. These bits of advice are solely from my personal experience and are not intended for everyone. So some of these bits of advice will work for me, but not somebody else. So someone with BPD experiences emotions a lot more intensely and a lot more kind of sharply than a lot of people. So emotional instability is basically any mood you can think of: happy, sad, sorrow, rage, panic, terror, any of these things that you would normally experience, BPD sufferers also experience them. It is common for people with BPD to experience intense behaviour only for like a short period of time, but it will be a lot more intense than somebody else in the general population or general community. So I actually hate saying normal, so I'm going to try and avoid that word, because what is normal? It is common with someone with BPD to experience suicidal feelings. This can either last a few hours or a few days, and usually it is very intense. During this, a lot of people with BPD can feel the intense kind of, I want to do something to act on these emotions, and it can be quite hard to actually distract yourself and get out of those sort of mindsets. So in terms of the emotional instability, it is important to help the person with BPD rationalise their thoughts. So for example, if they're saying, I hate myself, you could say to them, well, why do you feel that way? Because yes, the root core is, I hate myself, but what is around that making you feel that you hate yourself? A lot of people with BPD have a very black and white thinking about things. So they think, oh, I hate myself or I love myself. There is no like in between, like I love this part about me, but I hate this bit about me. So there's no grey. Normally a lot of the thinking is black or it's white. There is no sort of, middle ground. So questioning people with BPD can be quite helpful because it can give them the opportunity to actually question what they're thinking, rather than just saying, I hate myself, and then spiralling into a really, really bad episode. And it's also important to ask the questions to the person with BPD. Don't answer them for them. So if they're saying, I hate myself, don't say to them, well, you can't hate yourself because you're pretty or something like that. That's not going to help the behaviour. The best thing to do is to say, well, why do you feel like you hate yourself? So the second section is disturbed patterns of thinking or behaviour. In an essence, in a nutshell, it means that somebody may experience intrusive thoughts. They may hear things like a person outside of their body, or they may see people around them. And this is where BPD crosses over a lot with other mental health conditions, such as bipolar and schizophrenia. So an example of a intrusive thought that someone might have is, I'm a terrible person, and that is what they say, that is what they think, or something like, everyone hates me. In this case, a lot of people with BPD actually just need the reassurance. They need the reassurance that they're not a terrible person, not everyone hates them, it's just how they're feeling and that their thought is just a thought. So my advice for this particular part of BPD, and also actually the next part, is grounding. So when I was younger, I was told grounding was the best thing since sliced bread. Grounding was the best thing on earth. Like, you could not have anything better. And it was shoved down my throat to the point where I actually started to hate it. But grounding in an essence is your senses. So it basically means anything that you can taste, anything you can hear, anything you can smell, and anything you can see. So sometimes counteracting the behaviour that the person is experiencing, like if they are seeing things, Can you find out what is best going to help them? So is it putting on a movie? Is it listening to some music to try and drown out what's happening? Or is it just being with that person and giving them a cuddly toy to touch? Or is it making them their favourite food or drink? Sometimes any of that can actually just help them to make the episode less intense or less prolonged. So the next section I'd like to talk about is impulsive behaviour. So impulsive behaviour has a massive misconception with manipulation. So impulsive behaviour is not something that can be controlled by the person who has BPD. It is a impulse, a need, a must, and it's so intense that they think, okay, the best way out of this is to hurt myself. And this can either be through cutting, through burning, through any form of self-harm or damage to themselves, including the suicidal attempts. Another form of self-harm behaviour, which not a lot of people think about, is the strong impulse to engage in the reckless behaviour, such as binge drinking, drug misuse, and like spending lots of money and unprotected sex with strangers. Lots of things like that are things that people don't really think about. They don't really think, oh, that person's getting drunk every day this week. You know, is there actually a problem there? Obviously, there might not be, but sometimes in a person that has borderline personality disorder, the binge drinking, drug using, stuff like that can actually be a sign that they're slipping into a relapse. My advice for this piece of BPD is pretty much the same as the last one. It is the grounding, it is the senses, it is getting that person back to baseline. So if you would like to go and look at and listen again to the grounding bits, I will leave a time code up here on screen and you can skip back to that bit and listen to me talk about the grounding. Also, with things of impulsivity, sometimes it is just good to stay with that person, to stay there, to support them, to be there. And even if you're not saying anything, even if you're not doing anything, it's important to be almost just keeping an eye on them, just making sure they're okay. And especially when it comes to the impulse to engage in reckless behaviour, sometimes it's important to just be a watchful eye in terms of if they're having a beer, is that going to be okay? Or is that a sign they're going to then reach for another and another and another? Do you need to be someone to step in and say to them, I think you've had enough? If you're also there, you can provide things such as distractions. Distractions are something that whenever I hear it and I'm in a situation, I usually hate the word distractions. And that's usually because distractions are such a broad topic as to what will help that person. So actually, distractions can be different from one person to another. If you would like me to do another video on the types of distractions that you can use, then please leave a comment in the description box below, because otherwise I'll be talking about distractions for the next 10 minutes. And sometimes with BPD, it's a complex disorder in which the impulses are going to be different for everyone. For me, I never engaged really in drinking, drug use, or like sex or gambling or anything. I never really engaged in any of that. So that wasn't something I struggled with, but I definitely struggled with the self-mutilation and the self-harm in a physical sense on my body. So sometimes if you are with the person and you can tell they're not feeling very well, discreetly going off to the bathroom and removing anything that is sharp or that they can hurt themselves with. This can include things like scissors, razors, and any medication that they would usually overdose with, such as painkillers. So the last and final section of BPD that is defined by the NHS is the unstable relationships. So a lot of the times with BPD, the people who suffer with it, they've got a lot of trauma hidden behind that condition. They've had lots of friendships and the friendships have never lasted, and that can be the case for actually romantic relationships as well. And then going back to the whole talking about the black and white thinking, they will either think we're friends or we're madly in love. And there's no in between. There's no we're friends going towards being madly in love. There is no kind of grey area in the middle. This, in my experience, can leave someone with BPD being quite confused. And this will go back to the whole, they will ask you for reassurance. And asking for reassurance isn't a bad thing. It is just their way of being like, I want to make sure my thoughts are just thoughts, that they're not the truth. Someone with BPD, if they feel that that friendship is coming to an end, and sometimes friendships can't always be saved. Sometimes it's just the person with BPD being like, I don't want to lose another friend. And that can be one of the things that goes round and round in that person's head. And that's why they try and hold on to all the friendships they have, because they just don't want to go through that trauma again and again and again of not having friends. BPD and being manipulative. I myself have had a doctor turn around to me and say that I'm manipulative. And I wasn't meaning to be. If I was well, I wouldn't have said the things I said. So it's important to remember that if someone with BPD is coming across as manipulative, 9 times out of 10, they don't mean it. They don't mean to be like that. They're just having such an inner battle in their head that they're struggling to communicate with like how they're feeling and how they want help. This is kind of one side of it. The other side is sometimes the person with BPD can feel overly loved and overly kind of like smothered almost. And if they feel smothered, they will just use coping mechanisms or behaviours that may seem out of context to somebody who doesn't understand. So things like shouting at them or withdrawing. This can be the case because they just don't know how to like say to somebody, I'm not feeling great, I feel like you're overdoing things. My advice, my general advice for the whole of BPD and this section in particular is reassurance. Reassurance. Things like this is really important with someone with BPD because they need to feel like they're not going to lose somebody else. Things like if the person with BPD was to say to you, can we meet? Can we go for a picnic? For example, saying to them, I can't do Wednesday, but I can do Saturday, giving them that immediate change or like, alternative to what they want. Because if you just say, no, I can't do it, that person with BPD is going to think, oh, they don't want to be friends with me, and it's going to it could send them into a low. This can also be the case that if they message you and you're busy, taking those 2 or 3 minutes to sit there and type out, I'm really sorry, love, or I'm really sorry, but I'm busy at the moment. Give me an hour and I'll reply to your text. The most important way to make sure that you don't personally forget, to reply to them is to set an alarm on your phone or a reminder to go off in an hour to make sure that you check in with that person and that you speak to them, especially if you know that they're not feeling well or you know that they're struggling in any shape or form.
Hello, I just want to say thank you for your question. I don't really know much about like the different types of BPD, but it's good that you've brought that up because then I can do a bit of research and maybe do a follow-up video on the one I've just filmed. Exactly. So BPD is often viewed as something that is really, really bad, but actually, once you get to know someone with BPD, they can be the most loving, loyal, kind, caring person you will ever meet. Show love in completely different ways, for example. So, like, they may take 20, 30 minutes to decide on one small birthday present because they know that it will mean so much to you and they want to show that they really thought about something. I am actually so glad that someone else said it actually because this is something that a lot of people with BPD just feel like they are alone. They feel like nobody else actually like feels exactly the same way. So this just seconds what I said in the video about we aren't manipulative. We aren't trying to converse you and make you think to do something that you don't want to do. It is simply our disorder talking. So thank you.
So that is pretty much the video. I have gone through all the different symptoms. I am now just going to talk about a little bit of advice in relating just dealing with BPD in general. And this is more aimed at people who are caring for somebody with BPD. So it's important to remember that someone with BPD has experienced a lot of trauma in relating to relationships, and sort of saying things that are going to make them relive that trauma is very harmful for them. So personally, I have had some friends, and I do that because they're not really friends anymore, but I've had some people say to me, you're just too much, or I can't deal with you anymore, or all the mood swings. And it's like, to that BPD person, they're thinking, well, I can't help having my mood swings. I can't help being the way I am. So you must hate me. Okay, I'm going to lose another friend again. And that is the very black and white thinking. Another important point with BPD is to be open and honest. Tell them how you're feeling and tell them in a straight and not covered up manner. So if you're feeling like, they're relapsing or anything like that, sort of talking to them and saying, I'm concerned about you. Is there anything I can do to help? And sometimes the BPD person will then withdraw because they don't really want to tell somebody that they're struggling because their condition is basically they've hid it for quite a bit of time and they don't want to open up and trust somebody. But if you kind of give a reason behind it and you say, I'm really concerned about you, have you been hurting yourself? And being straight with that person can sometimes work. Again, I'm going to reiterate the fact that it doesn't always work. It's not a one size fits all kind of condition. I'm just giving a few alternatives. And if you try it and you get a really, really bad response, don't do it again, because that particular piece of advice doesn't fit that particular person with BPD. In terms of the general day-to-day living with someone with BPD, and if you're noticing that they're starting to slip into that downward spiral, being kind of blunt but caring at the same time can really help. So things like, I've made you dinner, can you please come and eat it? And just being short and kind of blunt, but you're caring at the same time. Another way of doing it is to say to them, like, I've made you dinner, here it is, and put it physically in front of them. Especially if you know the reason they're not eating is because they're feeling low or because they don't feel like they need to eat. And sometimes just putting the food in front of them or giving them a drink can help them, because physical health is actually quite tied in quite sort of well with mental health. And if you're hungry or if you're feeling any physical symptoms, it can be quite hard to deal with the emotions that are up in your head. And you need that food, you need that rest, you need that comfort to be able to deal with the emotional side of things. I would just like to say again that there will be a link to a Tumblr page which has got all of the links for the worldwide helplines. So it doesn't matter what country you're in, there is a helpline number for that country. And one last piece of advice for carers in the UK. I know that my area does it, but some other areas might not. There is a carers group, and it is via the NHS, and you can usually sign up for it with your local kind of care team. And it's for carers or anybody who has somebody with BPD that they want to be able to understand and care for better. In these sessions, it teaches parents, friends, boyfriends, girlfriends, the ability to word and cope of having someone with BPD. It can also teach parents who have multiple children and one person, like one child with BPD, to be able to explain to younger siblings what's going on when the older sibling is struggling. And I believe that is an important thing if you're wanting to help anyone that you know, anyone close, and you're wanting to understand the condition more. Alright, so that's it for today's video. Thank you for watching. If you liked what you saw today and you found it helpful, please click the like button. Any suggestions in the comments, and if you like my content, please consider hitting the subscribe button.